Let me ask you something. What is the largest animal that has ever lived on this planet? You probably already know the answer. Blue whale, 100 feet long, 200 tons, largest creature in the history of Earth. You learned it in school. You have seen the pictures. You nodded and moved on. Here is the problem. You have no idea what that actually means. And I do not say that to be rude. I say that because I did not either. Not really. Not until I started actually reading the science. Not until I started looking at what this animal actually does with that body. Because the moment you go past the basic facts, past the length and the weight and the krill, you find something genuinely difficult to believe. Something that the photographs do not prepare you for. Something that makes you stop and say out loud, to nobody in particular, wait. Seriously? So that is what this documentary is about. Not the blue whale you think you know. The one underneath. The real one. And I promise you, it is so much stranger than whatever you are picturing right now. Stay with me, because we are going to go through 5 things about this animal that science itself did not expect to find. 5 things that were hiding in plain sight inside the largest body on Earth. And by the time we are done, I think the ocean is going to mean something very different to you than it does right now. Let us start with something that sounds simple. How big is a blue whale, really? You know the number, 100 feet. But numbers are useless until they are attached to something you can actually picture. So let me try something different. Let me take that number out of the textbook and put it somewhere you can feel it. Think about the street outside your home right now. Pick a building you walk past regularly. Maybe your office, maybe a hotel, maybe just a tall apartment block nearby. Count the floors. A standard floor in a building is about 10 feet high. Now I want you to lay a blue whale on its side against that building. Nose touching the ground, tail pointing straight up. A fully grown blue whale, not an unusually large one, just a normal adult, reaches the 10th floor. 10 stories of a building designed and built to hold hundreds of human beings. From nose to tail, one animal. Let that image sit in your mind for a moment before we move on. Now the weight. A blue whale weighs up to 200 tons, 400,000 pounds. I know that number means almost nothing on its own, so let me give you something to hold on to. The average family car weighs about 4,000 pounds, so a blue whale weighs the same as 100 cars. Not 100 cars parked in a lot somewhere. 100 cars worth of living mass, moving through water, breathing, thinking, eating, communicating. One organism. And here is where things start getting genuinely strange. That weight, that 400,000 pounds of biological mass, should not be possible. Not for an animal, not on this planet. And if you think I am being dramatic, consider this. The largest land creatures that have ever existed were the great sauropod dinosaurs, Argentinosaurus, Patagoteton. The animals that shook the ground when they walked, that bent trees just by leaning against them, that left footprints deep enough to stand in. These were the giants of giants, the absolute ceiling of what land evolution has ever produced in 200 million years of trying. The biggest of them reach somewhere between 60 and 80 tons. A blue whale weighs more than twice that, by a significant margin. On a planet where land evolution had 200 million years, and the best it could do was 80 tons. The ocean produced something that weighs over 200. So the obvious question is why? Why can the ocean do something that all of land evolution never managed? What is the ocean giving the blue whale that the land was withholding from the dinosaurs? The answer is gravity. Or more specifically, It is the fact that the ocean simply does not care about gravity the same way land does. Here is what I mean. On land, every single pound of your body is fighting gravity every second of every day. Your skeleton, every bone from your feet to your skull, exists for essentially one reason and one reason only: to hold your body upright against a force that never ever stops pulling you toward the ground. For a human being, this works fine. For an elephant, it works. But you can see the effort in every step they take, every time they lower themselves slowly and carefully to the ground. But there is a hard ceiling built into the physics of bone and tissue. There is a point beyond which no skeleton can support the weight above it, beyond which the material simply fails. Land has a size limit, and that limit is baked into the laws of physics. You cannot engineer your way around it. You cannot evolve your way around it. The ceiling is the ceiling. Water removes the ceiling entirely. Water pushes back. This is buoyancy, and you already know what it is. But I want you to think about what it actually means for a creature as massive as a blue whale. When you submerge something in water, the water pushes upward against every inch of its surface. For a rubber duck, this is trivial. For 400,000 pounds of blue whale, that upward push is enormous. It counteracts the downward pull of gravity almost completely. The ocean is, in a very real and measurable sense, a zero-gravity simulator. An animal in the ocean does not need a skeleton capable of holding up its own weight, because the water is doing that job instead. The blue whale found this loophole, and then it exploited it to an extent that nothing else in the history of life on Earth has managed to match. But here is what most people miss when they hear this explanation. The freedom to grow large in the ocean does not mean that being large in the ocean is easy. It is not. It creates a completely new set of problems. Extreme, immediate, potentially fatal problems that a smaller animal would never face. The blue whale is not large because the ocean made things easy. The blue whale is large because it solved a series of problems that would have killed almost anything else. And the way it solved each of those problems is where this story gets genuinely fascinating. Let us start with the most immediate one. If you weigh 400,000 pounds, you have to feed 400,000 pounds every single day, without exception. There is no skipping meals when your body requires this much fuel just to keep its systems running. No fasting, no waiting for better conditions, no making do with less. 400,000 pounds of biological machinery demands fuel constantly. Now think about how large predators solve this problem. A lion finds prey, sprints, kills, eats, simple and brutal. A great white shark circles its target, builds speed, charges, bites. A pod of orcas coordinates a hunt over hours to exhaust something larger than themselves. In every case, the energy spent hunting is less than the energy gained from eating. The equation balances. But now imagine you are a blue whale. You weigh as much as 100 cars. Moving that mass through water, which is 800 times denser than air, burns calories at a rate that makes conventional hunting not just difficult, but mathematically impossible. If a blue whale tried to chase prey the way a shark chases prey, accelerating, turning, pursuing, it would burn more energy in the chase than it could ever get from catching anything worth catching. It would literally starve to death while actively hunting. The equation does not balance. It does not come close to balancing. So the largest creature on Earth solved this with a strategy so counterintuitive that it almost sounds like a joke. It eats the smallest creatures on Earth, krill, tiny shrimp-like crustaceans barely an inch long, translucent, almost invisible individually, weighing a fraction of a gram each. so small that if you held a single one in your palm, you would struggle to see it clearly. The animal that weighs as much as 100 cars, the largest organism that has ever existed on this planet, survives almost entirely on creatures you could accidentally step on 1,000 times without ever noticing. And the way it eats them is one of the most extreme and physically remarkable events that occurs anywhere in the natural world. When a blue whale locates a dense swarm of krill, and these swarms can stretch for miles, millions upon millions of individual animals packed close together in the water column, the whale does not slow down to feed gently. It does the opposite. It accelerates. It drives its entire massive body forward at speed, directly toward the swarm, and at the last moment, it opens its jaw, not a little, to nearly 90 degrees, an opening so wide, on a skull so large, that it looks structurally impossible the first time you see it, in slow-motion footage. The lower jaw drops and swings forward, and the throat expands outward, and in a single movement. One lunge, lasting just a few seconds. The whale engulfs a volume of water roughly equal to its own body weight, 20,000 gallons, in one mouthful. I want you to stop on that number for a second. 20,000 gallons of water and millions of krill, taken in a single movement. The water rushing into the whale's mouth at that moment weighs almost as much as the whale itself. For one fraction of a second, this animal has effectively doubled its own mass just by opening its mouth. The force required to slow that water down, to stop the momentum of 20,000 gallons rushing in, is extraordinary. Researchers studying lunge feeding have described it as one of the most energetically extreme events in vertebrate biology. And here is something about lunge feeding that does not get talked about enough. The lower jaw of a blue whale is not rigidly attached to the skull the way your jaw is attached to yours. It is connected by a network of cartilage and elastic tissue that allows it to swing outward and downward far beyond what a rigid joint could permit. When the whale opens its mouth to that 90-degree angle and the water hits that expanding throat pouch, the tissue stretches enormously. The throat area, what scientists call the ventral pouch, can expand to a volume larger than the rest of the whale's body. The whale, for the duration of a lunge, is more throat than anything else. And inside that throat pouch, as the water rushes in, there is a dense network of nerves unlike anything found in any other animal. A relatively recent discovery, published only in the last decade or so, found a previously unknown sensory organ embedded in the connective tissue of the chin, right at the point where the two halves of the lower jaw meet. This organ appears to help coordinate the lunge, sensing the water pressure and the timing of the expansion, and helping the whale manage the mechanics of taking in that much water without losing control of the movement. Evolution built a sensor for a problem that only existed at this scale. Then the filtering begins. The inside of the jaw is lined with baleen plates, long, bristled structures hanging from the upper jaw like the teeth of an enormous comb, or like the world's most extreme coffee filter. Once the mouth closes, the tongue, which alone weighs as much as a full-grown elephant, roughly 6 tons, pushes upward with enormous force and drives the water back out through those baleen plates. The bristles trap the krill, the water flows out, and the whale is left with several hundred pounds of krill from a single lunge, delivering somewhere in the range of 450,000 calories in one feeding event. The whale does this dozens of times a day. By the time it stops feeding, it has consumed up to 8,000 pounds of krill. 8,000 pounds of animals barely an inch long, every single day. Now here is the question that I think is worth asking at this point. Why krill? There are larger prey items in the ocean. Fish, squid, things with substantially more calories per individual than a creature barely an inch long. Why has the largest animal on Earth committed entirely to the smallest possible prey when larger options exist? The answer comes back to energy mathematics. Krill aggregate in swarms so dense that a single lunge through a good swarm can yield hundreds of pounds of food in seconds. No individual prey item, regardless of its calorie content, can match that rate of caloric delivery per unit of energy expended. A blue whale chasing fish or squid would be spending energy pursuing individual targets, accelerating and turning and maneuvering. Krill just sit there in a swarm and wait. The whale charges through them like a net through a cloud. The energy equation works only with prey that aggregates, and nothing aggregates like krill. I always come back to that number, 8,000 pounds per day. There is something about the scale and the precision of it. The fact that this strategy, this seemingly absurd strategy of eating the tiniest possible prey, is actually the only strategy that works at this scale, that I find genuinely difficult to process. The ruthless, elegant, almost brutal efficiency of it. But here is what I need you to understand. The feeding, as extraordinary as it is, as extreme as the physics of lunge feeding are, is actually the most ordinary thing about this animal. It is the most visible, the most photographed, the most documented aspect of the blue whale. What is hiding deeper inside that enormous body, in systems that took scientists decades of work to even begin to measure, is where the story gets truly strange. And that is what we're going to talk about next. But before we get to the heart, there is one more thing about the blue whale's body that deserves its own moment, because it connects everything else, and most people have never thought about it. Blue whales are warm-blooded mammals. Their core body temperature is approximately 37 degrees Celsius, almost exactly the same as a healthy human being, and they live in the ocean, in water that, in the feeding grounds of the Southern Ocean and the North Pacific, can drop to near freezing. Water pulls heat away from a warm body roughly 25 times faster than air does. If you jumped into water at near freezing temperature, your core body temperature would begin dropping almost immediately. Hypothermia would set in within minutes. You would not survive long. The blue whale dives into that water and feeds in it for months. The solution is blubber, a layer of fat and connective tissue that wraps the entire body of the whale, ranging from about 15 to 50 centimeters in thickness, depending on the individual and the season. At its thickest, blue whale blubber is nearly 2 feet deep. It is not just insulation the way a winter coat is insulation. It is an extraordinarily effective thermal barrier that prevents the cold of the surrounding water from ever reaching the whale's core, tissues, and organs. The whale can swim through water that would kill you in minutes and maintain a completely stable internal temperature. But here is the twist, and this is one of those details that captures something essential about what evolution actually is. The blubber works so well that it creates the opposite problem. When a blue whale is swimming at speed, using those enormous muscles to drive 100 feet and 400,000 pounds through the water, those muscles generate tremendous amounts of heat, and that heat has nowhere to go. The blubber that keeps the Antarctic cold out also keeps the metabolic heat in. A blue whale swimming hard in cold water can overheat, in water that is literally near freezing. The insulation that keeps it alive is the same insulation that can cook it from the inside. The solution evolution arrived at is remarkable. The fins, specifically the flukes and the pectoral fins, In these areas, the blubber layer is much thinner, and the blood vessels just below the surface are arranged in a specific pattern. Warm arterial blood flowing out runs directly alongside cooled venous blood returning, and heat transfers between them before reaching the core. The fins act as radiators. When the whale needs to shed excess heat, blood is pumped to the surface of the fins where it loses heat to the surrounding water before returning to the core. The same animal that uses blubber to survive near freezing water uses its fins as heat radiators to prevent overheating while doing so. Both systems operating simultaneously, both necessary, neither sufficient without the other. That is what I mean when I say this animal is optimized, not vaguely, specifically. Every problem that comes with being this large in this environment has a precise solution, and every solution is the product of millions of years of refinement. Let us talk about the heart. A blue whale's heart is roughly the size of a small car, approximately 5 feet long, 5 feet wide, 5 feet tall. It weighs around 400 pounds on its own. When it beats, which you can hear with the right equipment from nearly 2 miles away, it produces a sound so low in frequency that it sits at the very bottom edge of what human hearing can detect. It is the largest heart of any animal that has ever existed on this planet. Larger than the hearts of the dinosaurs, larger than anything evolution has produced before or since. And what it does when the whale dives is something that, when scientists first measured it directly, they genuinely did not believe. Here is the context. Blue whales need to dive to feed. Krill aggregate at depth, and the whale must descend to find them. A typical feeding dive takes the whale down several hundred feet, sometimes deeper. It can hold its breath for up to 90 minutes, though typical dives are shorter. And during those dives, the whale faces an immediate and serious problem. It is a mammal. It breathes air. The oxygen stored in its blood and muscles at the moment it submerges is all it has until it surfaces again. Every system in its body that burns oxygen is a drain on a supply that cannot be replenished until the dive is over. For a normal mammal of normal size, the solution would be to just hold its breath and hope for the best. But a blue whale is not a normal mammal of normal size. It has a body that is 100 feet long. Pumping oxygenated blood from the heart all the way to the tip of the tail and back is an enormous task under normal conditions. The circulatory system of an animal this size has to cover distances and volumes that no land mammal ever approaches. And if the heart keeps beating at surface rate during a dive, it burns through the available oxygen so fast that the whale would have to surface every few minutes. The dive would be almost useless. So the blue whale's heart does something extraordinary. When the whale begins to dive, the heart rate drops. At the surface, it beats at around 25 to 30 times per minute. Unremarkable for an animal this size, but within seconds of the dive beginning, the rate begins to fall. 10 beats per minute, then 5. And at the deepest, most efficient point of the dive, it reaches 2 beats per minute. 2. There are gaps of up to 30 seconds of complete silence between each heartbeat. 30 seconds where the largest heart on Earth is simply not beating. The whale is not in distress. It is not experiencing cardiac failure. It is doing this intentionally, consciously, actively, as a practiced biological strategy, slowing its own heart to near stopping to conserve oxygen for exactly the organs that cannot afford to be without it. The brain, the core swimming muscles, everything else, the digestive system, the peripheral circulation, the extremities, gets cut off. Blood flow redirected. Oxygen rationed to an almost unbelievable degree. If a human heart dropped to 2 beats per minute, we would lose consciousness in seconds, and be dead very shortly after. The blue whale does this multiple times every single day for its entire life. And the heart rate is not the only thing that changes during a dive. The entire circulatory system reorganizes. Blood vessels leading to non-essential organs and tissues constrict, reducing or cutting off flow to the digestive system, the peripheral muscles, the structures that can tolerate temporary oxygen deprivation. Blood is actively redirected, shunted away from everything that can wait and concentrated in the pathways that cannot. The brain and the core swimming muscles receive priority access to the remaining oxygen. Everything else waits. This is called a diving response, and versions of it exist in many marine mammals and even in humans to a small degree. But in the blue whale, the magnitude of the response is unlike anything observed elsewhere. The heart rate reduction from 30 beats to 2 is more extreme than in any other measured species. The circulatory reorganization is more complete. The oxygen management is more precise. It is as if the diving response across millions of years of evolution in an animal that needed to dive deeper and longer and more efficiently than anything else was refined to its absolute limit. There is also what happens to the blood itself. Blue whale blood has an unusually high concentration of hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen, compared to most land mammals. Their muscles contain high concentrations of myoglobin, which stores oxygen directly in muscle tissue and gives the muscles of marine mammals their characteristically dark color. A blue whale's muscle tissue is so dark, it is nearly black. That darkness is the oxygen storage. The whale is not just managing the oxygen in its blood during a dive. It is drawing on reserves stored throughout its muscle tissue, releasing it as needed, extending the effective duration of each breath taken at the surface, far beyond what the lung capacity alone would suggest. And then it surfaces. And what happens next is almost as remarkable as the slowdown itself. In the span of just a few seconds, that heart accelerates from 2 beats per minute back to 25 or 30. An organ the size of a small car, going from near standstill to full operational speed almost instantly. The researchers who first recorded this in 2017, using a heart rate monitor attached to a live wild blue whale via suction cup, which is an achievement in itself, described the acceleration as faster than they believed was physiologically possible for an organ of that mass. The data looked like instrument error. They checked everything. The instruments were fine. The blue whale was just doing something they had never measured in a living animal before. And I want to say something about that research specifically, because I think it matters to how we understand what we know and do not know about this animal. The study that first directly measured the blue whale's heart rate during a dive was published in 2019, based on data collected in 2017. We are not talking about ancient natural history. We are talking about something scientists figured out in the last decade. For most of human history, and for most of the history of marine biology as a scientific discipline, the internal mechanics of what a blue whale's heart does underwater were unknown. We could infer from the physiology. We could model from theory. But nobody had directly measured it in a living wild animal until 7 years ago. What else is in there that we have not measured yet? That question, honestly, is part of why I find this animal impossible to stop thinking about. Now, I want to stop here for a moment. We are about halfway through this documentary, and I want to ask you something directly. Are you still with me? Because I know what happens at the halfway point of a long video. The phone screen lights up. Something else calls for attention. The initial curiosity that brought you here starts to compete with everything else. I understand that, but I am asking you to stay, not because the first half was not worth your time, I hope it was, but because what comes next is the part I find hardest to explain to people, the part that changes things in a way that is difficult to articulate, the part that has been quietly getting worse since the 1950s and almost nobody noticed until it was very nearly too late. The blue whale's voice and what we did to it. Here is a comparison to anchor this before we go further. A normal conversation between two people registers at about 60 decibels. A rock concert near the front registers around 115, loud enough to cause hearing damage after extended exposure. A jet engine at close range hits about 140 decibels, enough to cause immediate permanent damage. These are the loudest things most people ever encounter in their lives. The scale feels complete. What could possibly be louder in the natural world? A blue whale's call registers at 188 decibels. Let that number sit for a second. 188 decibels. Produced by a living animal, with its body, in the water. Not a machine, not an explosion, not an industrial process. An animal calling. For context, a nuclear weapons test measured from what scientists consider a safe observation distance registers around 210 decibels. The blue whale is not far behind. If you were swimming in the ocean and a blue whale decided to vocalize at full intensity within close range of your body, the physical pressure of those sound waves moving through the water could rupture your eardrums, could cause damage to your internal organs, could disorient you severely enough that you lost your sense of direction and drowned. Not because the whale wanted to harm you, not because it was behaving aggressively, simply because it was talking. The sound alone, the act of communication, is physically dangerous to human tissue at close range. The whale just needs to speak to accidentally hurt you. So why? Why does an animal need to produce sound at this intensity? What biological purpose requires a call that borders on the physically dangerous? The answer is distance. And the answer is loneliness in a way, though that word does not quite cover it. Consider where the blue whale lives. The open ocean, not a stretch of coast, not a sheltered bay or a reef system or an estuary. The open ocean, the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Southern Ocean. Environments that contain hundreds of millions of cubic miles of water, stretching in every direction as far as any measurement has ever reached. If you are a blue whale swimming through the Pacific Ocean, the statistical probability of accidentally encountering another blue whale by chance, of just swimming into one in the normal course of moving through that volume of water, is essentially zero. They need to find each other deliberately, and to find each other deliberately across those distances, they need a communication system that can cross those distances. And the ocean, it turns out, has exactly that. Built in, by physics, at a specific depth band in the ocean, roughly between 600 and 1,200 meters below the surface, though it varies by location and season. A combination of temperature, pressure, and water salinity creates a layer where sound behaves in a way it does not anywhere else. Instead of scattering in all directions and losing energy as it travels, sound waves entering this layer get bent, refracted. They curve back in on themselves and travel horizontally, following the layer, bouncing within it like light bouncing between mirrors, losing almost no energy over enormous distances. Scientists call this the SOFAR channel, sound fixing and ranging channel. It was actually discovered by military researchers during World War II, who were trying to build systems to detect submarine movements. What those researchers found, and what marine biologists confirmed decades later, is that a blue whale using this channel does not just project its call a few miles. A blue whale calling through the SOFAR channel can project its voice across an entire ocean basin. A whale in the waters near New York could send a call that reaches a whale near the coast of Portugal, possibly further. The exact range depends on ocean conditions, water temperature, the specific geometry of the channel in that region. But the principle is real, the physics are verified, and the implications are staggering. The largest animal on Earth has its own global communication network, not built by technology, built by the physics of water, used for millions of years before human beings existed to discover it. Blue whales singing to each other across thousands of miles of open ocean, coordinating breeding, maintaining social awareness of where others of their kind are located, in a world so vast that any other form of communication would be useless. And since approximately the 1950s, we have been filling that network with noise. This is the part that I want you to understand clearly, because it is quiet and invisible, and most people have never heard about it. Modern cargo ships are large, very large. The biggest of them displace hundreds of thousands of tons and run engines powerful enough to move that mass at speed across open ocean. Those engines produce low-frequency noise as a byproduct of their operation, not because anyone designed them to be loud, not because the shipping companies are trying to cause harm, simply because moving that much metal through water at speed generates noise, and the noise they generate happens to fall in the same low-frequency range that blue whales use to communicate through the SOFAR channel. The global shipping fleet today comprises tens of thousands of vessels. They are on every ocean at all times, in numbers that have grown consistently since the middle of the 20th century. The cumulative noise they produce has increased the ambient sound level in the ocean's low-frequency range by an estimated 10 to 15 decibels over pre-industrial levels in many areas. That might not sound like much, but decibels are logarithmic. 10 decibels represents a tenfold increase in sound intensity. 15 decibels represents more than 30 times. The ocean is not slightly noisier than it was in 1950. In the frequency range that matters for blue whale communication, it is dramatically, fundamentally, irreversibly noisier. The SOFAR channel still exists. The physics did not change. But the channel that once allowed blue whales to communicate across ocean basins is now filled with a constant, global background roar that did not exist 100 years ago. A blue whale sending a call at 188 decibels, a call that should carry for thousands of miles, now gets masked within dozens or hundreds of miles by the background noise of global trade. They are still calling. Researchers studying blue whale vocalizations have documented a consistent increase in the intensity of calls over recent decades, almost certainly as the whales respond to the rising noise floor by calling louder. But louder is not the same as farther. The range of their calls has shrunk dramatically. What used to be a hemisphere-spanning communication network is now, in many ocean regions, reduced to something far more limited. They are shouting into a room that keeps getting louder, and they cannot leave the room. I find this one genuinely difficult to sit with, not because it is dramatic or visually striking. It is not. You cannot photograph ocean noise. You cannot see it from space. You cannot point at it. It is just a slow, invisible, ongoing reduction of the world's largest animal's ability to connect with others of its kind. Quiet and relentless and almost entirely unnoticed by anyone outside a small community of marine acoustics researchers. And it connects directly to what almost happened to the blue whale not long ago. Not in geological time, not in the prehistoric past, in living human memory. within the lifetimes of people who are still alive today. In the early 1900s, scientists and whalers who kept records estimated the global blue whale population at somewhere around 250,000 individuals, spread across all the world's oceans, a number large enough that even with their vast habitat, the SOFAR channel was sufficient to keep them connected. By 1966, there were fewer than 300, not 300,000, 300 total, in every ocean on Earth combined. In less than 70 years, in a period shorter than a single human lifetime, shorter than the career of a single scientist, shorter than the time between World War I and the moon landing, the population of the largest animal that has ever lived on this planet was reduced by more than 99%. Not by a natural disaster, not by a disease, not by a shift in ocean chemistry or a change in climate, or any of the forces that have driven mass extinctions in the geological past. By one invention and the industrial infrastructure built around it, the explosive harpoon cannon. Before this technology existed, blue whales were effectively beyond the reach of human hunters. They were too large, too powerful, too fast. Traditional whalers in open boats with hand-thrown harpoons could occasionally take smaller whale species under specific conditions, but blue whales were simply not a realistic target. They were safe by virtue of being too much. In 1868, a Norwegian whaling captain and inventor named Sven Foyn patented a new kind of weapon. A cannon mounted on the bow of a steam-powered ship that fired a heavy iron harpoon tipped with a grenade that detonated inside the whale's body after impact. The steam power meant the ship could match the blue whale's speed. The cannon meant the harpoon could reach it from a distance. The explosive tip meant a single hit was often fatal. For the first time in human history, blue whales could be hunted at industrial scale. And they were. The scale of what followed is difficult to fully comprehend. In the Southern Ocean alone, just one region of one ocean, whalers killed approximately 29,000 blue whales in a single season in 1930. 29,000 animals, each one the largest creature on Earth, killed in a single year in a single ocean region. Factory ships followed the hunting vessels, processing carcasses at sea continuously, so the operation never had to pause or return to port. The blue whale, the most extraordinary biological organism this planet has ever produced, was being rendered into oil for industrial lubricants and margarine and soap, into fertilizer, into pet food. Nations competed to maximize their annual catch. There were international agreements, and they were consistently ignored or undermined when they conflicted with economic interest. The killing continued season after season, decade after decade, and the population fell, and kept falling. The most basic principle of sustainable harvesting, do not take more than the population can replace, was either not understood, not measured, or simply not considered relevant. There is a detail from this period that I find particularly difficult to sit with. By the 1940s and 50s, some whalers and some scientists were already raising concerns. Population numbers were declining visibly. Catches that had been routine earlier in the century were becoming harder to achieve. Ships were traveling further, spending longer at sea, and returning with fewer animals than they had a decade before. The signs were there for anyone looking carefully. But the economic machinery was too large, the investment too significant, the industry too established to stop. And so it continued. By the time the International Whaling Commission finally banned commercial blue whale hunting in 1966, the population had been reduced to a level that many of the scientists involved believed might be below the threshold for recovery. The genetic diversity might be too damaged. The remaining individuals too spread across too vast an ocean, with a communication network already being degraded, to find each other reliably enough to breed at a rate that could rebuild the population. 300 animals, the entire global population of the largest organism that has ever lived. 300 in an ocean already beginning to fill with the noise that was narrowing their ability to communicate. The numbers, honestly, did not look good. But here is the thing about blue whales. They have been solving problems that should have killed them for millions of years. They survived, slowly, painfully slowly, given the biology involved. A blue whale does not reach reproductive maturity until it is around 10 years old. A female produces roughly one calf every 2 to 3 years. There is no rapid recovery, no population explosion that can undo decades of industrial-scale killing within a few years. Every gain in population is measured in individual animals, in single calves born and surviving to maturity, in slow and fragile steps back from the edge. But the steps kept coming. From 300 to 1,000, from 1,000 to several thousand. Current estimates and counting whales across multiple ocean basins is genuinely difficult. So these numbers carry real uncertainty. Put the global blue whale population at somewhere between 10,000 and 25,000 individuals, depending on the subspecies and the survey methodology, which sounds like a recovery. And in some ways, it is. The species did not go extinct. The worst outcome did not happen. But 10,000 to 25,000 is not 250,000. They are still listed as endangered by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. They still face ongoing threats from ship strikes. A blue whale swimming near the surface cannot maneuver fast enough to avoid a 200,000-ton cargo ship traveling at speed. And ship strikes are now one of the leading documented causes of blue whale mortality. They still face the acoustic degradation of their communication environment. They still face the effects of climate change on the krill populations they depend on. As ocean temperatures shift, the distribution and abundance of krill is changing in ways that are not fully understood, but that are already affecting feeding patterns in some populations. Some subspecies have recovered more than others. The population of the coast of California has shown meaningful growth over several decades of protection and is considered one of the better recovery stories among blue whale populations globally. Other populations in the Indian Ocean, in parts of the Southern Hemisphere, remain at critically low levels, with little sign of meaningful increase. The global number is an average that hides significant variation in how different groups of the same species are faring in different parts of the world. They are here. They survived what should have been unsurvivable. But the recovery is not complete, and the threats that remain are real. And I think about all of this. Everything we have covered in this documentary, from the impossible scale, to the stopping heart, to the silenced voice, to the near extinction. And I keep coming back to one thing. The blue whale is not the largest animal on Earth by accident. It is not a coincidence that it reached 100 feet and stopped there. It hit the precise physical limit of what is possible on a planet with Earth's gravity, Earth's ocean chemistry, Earth's biological constraints. The heart that slows to 2 beats is not a quirk. It is the only solution to the oxygen problem at that scale, refined over millions of years of evolution, discarding everything that did not work. The call at 188 decibels is not excess. It is the exact volume required to use the SOFAR channel effectively across the distances a blue whale needs to cross. The baleen, the tongue, the the ventral pleats that expand to hold 20,000 gallons. Every system, every structure, every behavior is calibrated to a precision that took longer than human civilization has existed to develop. It is the most optimized large organism this planet has ever produced. Not the most powerful in every sense, not invulnerable, but the most precisely, ruthlessly, completely adapted creature to its environment and its constraints that evolution has ever built at this scale. The final answer to the question of how large a living thing can get on Earth. And we reduced it to 300 individuals. Not because we were trying to destroy something irreplaceable, not because we were being deliberately cruel, but because the technology to exploit it existed. The economic incentive to exploit it was real, and nobody was measuring the cost until the cost was almost everything. I do not think the blue whale story is really about blue whales in the end. I think it is about what happens when we stop paying attention to something because it seems permanent, because it is large and has always been there, and it is hard to imagine a world without it. The blue whale survived the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs. It survived millions of years of predators and ice ages and the shifting of continents and every natural challenge the Earth has produced. It evolved a body so precisely calibrated that it represents the outer edge of what physics allows on this planet. It almost did not survive 70 years of having access to one new technology applied without restraint, but it did, and I find that worth something. Not as a comfortable conclusion, not as a reason to think everything is fine, because the threats are real and ongoing, and the population is still a fraction of what it was, but as a fact about what is still possible, about what survived, about what is still out in those oceans right now, crossing ocean basins, slowing its heart in the deep, calling through a channel built by physics millions of years before we arrived. I want to close with something specific, because I think abstract statements about the wonder of nature are easy to say and hard to hold on to. So let me give you a concrete image instead. Right now, somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, most likely somewhere between California and Hawaii, or off the coast of Chile, or in the waters south of Sri Lanka, there is a blue whale that was alive before the hunting ban, before 1966, an animal that was born into a world where its species was being reduced to nothing, that survived that period, that has lived for 60 years or more since the ban came into effect. Blue whales are believed to live at least 80 to 90 years, possibly longer. We do not know the upper limit with certainty because we have not been tracking individuals for long enough. That animal has a heart that has stopped and restarted millions of times. It has consumed somewhere in the range of 150 million pounds of krill over its lifetime. It has called through the Sofar Channel in the way its species has called for millions of years, even as the channel has filled with noise. It has navigated ocean basins using sensory abilities we are still working to understand. It has been alive for most of the history of the modern conservation movement, for the entire history of the internet, for every technological and political development of the past 6 decades. And it has no idea that any of that happened. It is just living, doing what blue whales do, being the largest animal that has ever existed on this planet, in the only environment where that is possible, with a body calibrated to every constraint that environment imposes. I think about that animal sometimes, what it has lived through without knowing it, what it represents, not symbolically, but just as a fact, that the largest creature on Earth is out there right now, today, doing the things it has always done. That is the thing about the blue whale that I find hardest to explain to people who have not spent time with this story. It is not the size, though the size is extraordinary. It is not the heart rate or the decibels or the baleen plates, though all of those things are genuinely remarkable. It is the persistence, the fact that this animal, this product of millions of years of refinement, this precise answer to the question of how large life can get, is still here, still doing it, against everything. The largest animal that has ever lived is still here. That is worth staying for. That is worth knowing. If this documentary gave you something you did not have before you pressed play, if the ocean feels even slightly different to you now than it did at the beginning, then subscribe to Abyss Files. Every week we go somewhere the surface does not show you. Every week there is something the ocean is still hiding. And I promise you, it only gets stranger from here.